It's your fangirl Tally, and it's time for another Elden Ring lore, the history of Bayle the Dread from Square Table Gaming. So let's do this.
There's always been something missing when discussing the dragons of Elden Ring. There was always a distinction between a dragon and an ancient dragon, and there's always been two forms of taking a dragon's power, through the rites of the ancient dragon cult, which were given freely, or by tearing out the heart of a dragon and consuming it for communion. I think it's safe to say we've all seen the typical dragons of the lands between, the drakes, as a less evolved, less powerful form of what should be considered a dragon. But thanks to Shadow of the Erdtree, we now have a definitive answer as to why these two types of dragons exist, as well as why the Drake Knight armor set is found in crumbling Farum Azula. Long ago, the Elden Lord Placidusax faced a foe who was ever so slightly too strong for him, and from their glorious battle arose Dragon Communion, the Drake Knights, and the Magma Worms. Today, we dig into Bayle the Dread, his history, and how his actions altered the course of dragonkind in the lands between, forever.
So this is Dragon Lore.
Welcome to Elden Lore, our weekly series where we discuss the people, places, and dragons of the lands between. If this is your first time finding the channel, welcome. We hope you enjoy our form of lore diving and storytelling. If you feel like you learned anything after finishing this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. It goes a long way in helping us stay relevant, and we'd really appreciate it. We also have a Discord where FromSoft fans come together to talk lore, share builds, and just generally enjoy each other's company. Whether you subscribe or not, your viewership is always enough for us, so thanks for hanging out today. With that said, let's get back to the story of Bayle the Dread and Dragonlord Placidusax. Long ago, well before Marika's time as a god, Dragonlord Placidusax ruled over the land from his seat at the heart of Farum Azula. During his reign, he ruled over the ancient dragons and the drakes, as well as possibly beastmen and some humanoids given the history of Dragon Communion, but we'll get to that. The Remembrance of the Dragonlord tells us, the Dragonlord, whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time, is said to have been Elden Lord in an age before the Erdtree. Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return. This implies that Placidusax may have actually taken orders directly from the Greater Will itself before it fled the land. And once that guidance was gone, he simply refused to take action on anything without it. As you can imagine, this must have led to some level of unrest in dragon society, and this is when Bayle comes into the picture. Bayle the Dread was presumably the general of the Drakes under Lord Placidusax's command, but he had his own machinations of taking the skies for himself. According to the Dragon Priestess, Bayle attacked Placidusax, causing a grievous wound.
Time long past, Bayle turned upon the Dragon Lord. The foul traitor assailed our master and inflicted a grievous wound, only to make a hasty retreat, becoming a sworn enemy of the brood. Since that day, Bayle and his bloodline, the Drakes, have served as sacrifices for Dragon Communion.
The Talisman of the Dread paints a slightly different picture. Talisman depicting the dread dragon of the Jagged Peak, whose roars cause the peak's molten fury to boil and churn, raises potency of magma. Bayle was the foul dragon's name, a terrible harbinger of destruction, whose challenge to the ancient Dragon Lord ended in grievous mutual injury. So this tells us that it was not simply a matter of Bayle attacking and running away, but a battle took place between the two in earnest. We can see the results on both dragons, as we finally know why Placidusax is missing heads. Upon looking at Bayle, we can see he's missing a leg, his wings are torn with protruding bones, and two of the heads of Placidusax are still embedded in his body. It seems Bayle managed to take a bit of power from his former lord with him when he fled, as he can now summon ancient dragon wings, replacements for his own, which were destroyed in his battle with Placidusax.
Oh, wow.
Which allow him to soar through the sky, and rain fire down upon us. I believe that sometime after this battle, Placidusax entered a long sleep, and that's where we find him, resting beyond time. While the Dragonlord licked his wounds, Bayle found himself beaten and bruised, but with new power and purpose. He fought his lord and lived to tell the tale, earning the title, the Dread. It's at this point I believe he and Elder Dragon Grail, the mother of all dragons, began to populate the lands between with dragons, or rather, drakes, so that they might outnumber the ancient dragons before another attempt at taking Farum Azula for themselves. The ancient dragons did not take this attack on their lord lying down, however, and they developed what would come to be known as Dragon Communion, and founded the Drake Knights. You can find the armor of the Drake Knights in Farum Azula, and it tells you it features the spoils of a dragon catch as an emblem of pride, as both dragon hunter and partaker of communion. These knights were overseen by one of the ancient dragon men, and the dragon hunter's great katana tells his story. Great katana with spines of gravelstone along its blade, wielded by the ancient dragon man of the Dragon's Pit, has an anti-dragon effect. Formerly a Dragon Communion warrior, the ancient dragon man was once arbiter of those worthy to devour the dreaded one. So this ancient dragon man is actually a successful Dragon Communion warrior who did not get to the point where he would become a magma worm. But given time, this could still be a possibility for him. It was this ancient dragon man who would watch over the Drake Knights and choose who among them were worthy of facing Bayle in battle, as the ultimate goal of this practice was to take the heart of Bayle himself and consume it in the purest form of Dragon Communion.
Wow.
While on track to face the Dread Dragon ourselves, we encounter the Drake Knight Egon, who wears rags and curses Bayle as he slowly crawls his way up the jagged peak. I won't get too in-depth about this man, as he deserves a video on his own, but it seems as though he may have faced Bayle before, and had his legs taken from him. The Dragon Priestess will tell us that he's an ideal Drake Knight, and exactly what Placidusax envisioned for those who take part in Dragon Communion. A dogged warrior, filled with the fury of a dragon hunting down his prey relentlessly. We can even summon him when we step foot in Bayle's arena, and he's eager to do battle with the drake that wounded a lord.
Curse you, Bayle!
Along the path before we reach the summit, we have multiple opportunities to pick up a crafting material called Dragon's Calor Bloom. This item is described as a flower with an uncanny shape, coursing with hot blood, exceedingly rare to find. A single flower is said to blossom only once, from the hearts of dead warriors who oft partook of the Dragon Communion.
Wow.
We can even pick one of these up directly from a corpse. So we can see Egon isn't the only Drake warrior to struggle up the jagged peak, and it seems as though none of them have made it back down alive.
Wow.
Once we face Bayle in battle, we see just how fearsome the first Drake truly is, and this is after having his leg taken by Placidusax. His flame can burn us to a crisp, and in his second phase, he calls upon the power of the ancient dragons that he is presumably pulling from the heads of his former lord, which are permanently embedded in his body. It's a hard-fought battle alongside our Drake Knight companion,
Just looks like a giant
but
rock.
eventually, we wrench the heart from
Crap.
the vile Bayle the Dread himself, so that we may partake in the purest form of communion. But the descriptions of the incantations we can learn from his heart are suspicious. Both tell us,
Vicious.
even after being consumed, the throbbing heart of Bayle continues to resist its subjugation, never weakening. One day, the fire within will consume the very body and soul of its communion devourer. One day. While we can fulfill the wishes of the Dragon Priestess, who we will also explore in another video, it seems as though following through with this particular act of Dragon Communion comes with its own consequences.
That's...
We know that overpartaking will turn you into a magma worm, and we've met a dragon man who partook successfully and was granted strength. But if we choose to feast on the heart of Bayle, our path is set, and we will be the catalyst Bayle the Dread needs to walk the land again.
Wow.
It's possible this description means his heart will eventually reduce us to cinders. But I believe that eventually, our flesh will become Bayle's, his heart burning away the tarnish that once was, so he can emerge again, and lead his drakes into an age ruled by the lower-born dragons, just as he tried to do when he attacked Placidusax. Perhaps it's best to simply ignore our hunger, and let this final act of communion pass us by. The story of Bayle the Dread put a neat bow on top of a lot of lore questions from Elden Ring, which is not something we've come to expect when it comes to FromSoft. Thanks to Bayle, we know Placidusax's injuries did not come from Godfrey, but from the first Drake himself. We learn that Dragon Communion originated with the ancient dragons of Farum Azula, and was actually a form of punishment against the Drakes, meant to ultimately lead to the end of Bayle. Also, Dragon Communion does not have to end with a transformation into a magma worm. It truly is possible to become a dragon, as long as you don't overindulge your appetite. Lastly, we learn that the Drake Knights were a faction started by the ancient dragons, which means that during their reign, there must have been humans, and that the tradition of Drake Knights stretches back farther than most other things in the lands between. So many answers come back to the story of Bayle the Dread, who stood against his lord for the betterment of his low-born people. While he did not come out unscathed, I think it's fair to say that Bayle earned his title that day, and all should fear the dread father of the Drakes.
I guess you can't argue with that. Jeez.
Thank you for joining us as we unravel the story of Bayle the Dread, the father of Drakes and betrayer of Dragonlord Placidusax. Do you believe the Drakes were always a lower class to the ancient dragons, or did they originate with Bayle himself? When did Bayle and Egon do battle? And how long was he left clawing his way up to the jagged peak? Did you run Bayle through with a hail of harpoons? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all, so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more.
Is every story someone's betraying someone else for something? I swear. What do you guys think? Comment below, let me know. I love to hear from you guys, especially on these things. I never really know what to think, because I don't play, and I'm passive in this situation. But I'd love to know. Remember to like this video if you are not already. Please subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you, and it really helps us out in the algorithm. Remember to hit that notification bell with your notifications turned on so that you know every time we drop a new video. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.